button. All right, it is recording now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yiling Zhuang. I'm the Water Resources Regional Specialized Agent in University of Florida IFAS Extension. I'm based in Mid-Florida Research and Education Center in Apopka, in the Orlando area. So welcome to the last webinar of this whole webinar series. And the last talk is septic system care before and after storms. So like I mentioned, I'm the extension agent. So not sure if this is their first time turning to an extension program. So if you are not familiar with extension, I will just give you a really quick intro of extension. So for extension, it's a partnership between state, federal, and county governments to provide scientific knowledge to the public. So we cover, like you can see the topics here, from agriculture, natural resources, food safety, lawn care, sustainable living, and family issues. So basically, it's everything under the sun. You can find a component with extension. And I usually say the best way to describe extension is with extension of University of Florida. So we extend science-based, research-based, and university-based information to the public. And on the map, you can see we have 5 districts. And I'm based in Central District, which is the orange area here, a little bit Central Florida and to a little bit North Central Florida. So this webinar is part of the Florida Well Owner Network. So when I say we, it's my cohort, my counterpart, Dr. Andrea Alberton, the Water RSA in the Northwest District, we developed this Florida Well Owner Network. We have 3 goals for this program. One is to educate residents about well water quality and quantity and the best practices to ensure well maintenance and groundwater protection. And 2 is to facilitate access to well water testing and provide information about treatment options if problems are found. And the third one is to complement efforts by Florida Department of Health and Florida Department of Environmental Protection to increase awareness among Floridians about the practices regarding wells, especially private wells, septic systems, and drinking water quality. And some background like why we developed this and why we have these goals is because the well situation in Florida, about 2.5 million Floridians, so they rely on private wells for home consumption. And different from public water supply, private wells are not regulated. So in other words, well owners, they control the management and protection of their wells. So in state of Florida, the Department of Health, they purview private wells, such as like issuing permits and also doing some data monitoring. And the data monitoring program is the well surveillance program. It's not for like routine water testing. It's to they identify and monitor areas where contaminated drinking water are suspected. So such as some like industrial contaminants or some pesticide contaminants. So far, they've tested over 185,000 samples since 2000. But like I said, it's not a routine water testing, so we still have very limited data, or basically it's very limited on how, like I said, we have very limited baseline data for private well water quality, or even just like how many well users they test their water and or they're drinking from contaminated wells. On the other side, because today's talk is septic systems, and most private well users, they also have septic systems. So similar to private wells, 1/3 of household in Florida depends on septic systems. So about estimate 2.5 million septic systems are in use across the state of Florida. I think the other day I read the statistics, 2.6 million septic systems are in use. And the Basin Management Action Plans identify septic systems as a major source of nitrogen to impaired water bodies. So if you attended the private way or the septic system 101 webinar, you see for BMAPs and the 2016 water bills, it's a layout, some actions relates to septic systems. So to achieve all the goals we lay out in like Florida Well Owner Network, that's the 2022 webinar series, and this is the topics. So if it's the first time you turn into our webinar series, please put it in the Q&A session. Let me know. Just want to know if you have attended earlier. So if you haven't, you can see the link here. It's all the links to recordings. I will share the PowerPoint slide with you after this webinar, and also link to the recording for this one. And then eventually I will upload all these webinar recordings to the YouTube channel, so more people can access our webinars. So like I mentioned, I already covered the private well 101, septic system 101 last month. It was the private well care before and after storms, and this one is septic system before and after storms. So what we'll cover in this presentation seems like only 3 bullet points, but it's quite a bit to be covered within an hour, probably only 45 minutes. I want to leave some time for discussions because the septic system 101 talk was about 2 months ago. So we'll do a quick recap about the basics of a conventional septic system, and then what are the major impacts of hurricanes and how do they impact septic systems. Actually, another bullet point I should have put there is then what should we do in relates to this impact. So now let's first look at the basics of a conventional septic system. So this is a diagram from on the left side is a diagram of a conventional septic system. So you see it's a house, and usually it's in your front yard, there's a septic system, and in your backyard, there's a private well. And on the right hand, you can see a very typical like a septic system with the concrete tank and the drain field. Sometimes we like to call it a septic tank, but just to be more accurate, it should be a system, because a tank itself is just a watertight container, and another critical part is the drain field. So now first, let's look at the septic tank. So first of all, septic tank is designed for the size and expected usage of the home. So the size of that is depend on the bedrooms in Florida. And for a typical septic tank, inside the tank, there's 3 layers. So the bottom layer is the solid layer. So all the waste, the sewer, when it goes to the septic tank, the natural occurring bacteria break down the organic matters and form a layer of sludge at the bottom. And the top layer is the oil and the grease. So it just rises up to the top. And the middle part is a liquid. And that liquid also move up to the drain field. So typically the tank size should be big enough to hold the water for at least 24 hours. So within that time frame, like 24 to 36 hours, let the natural occurring bacteria to break down the organic matters. And if we look at the tank, the common material is concrete. And now I've seen some, not a lot, but it's growing. It's using plastics. So like polyethylene tank. So because they are very light, it's much easier to transport it. Like I mentioned earlier, the size of the tank depends on how many bedrooms you have. And typically the tank is about 2 feet below the surface. And the setback is at least 50 feet from drinking well. And I said it's at least. So that's for Florida building code, I believe it says it's a 75 feet. Because for Florida building code, it doesn't separate the tank from the drain field. It just said 75 feet. Your private well should be 75 feet away from the septic system. And the 50 feet is from other states, because they separated the tank from the drain field, and the setback is 50 feet. The drinking well should be 50 feet away from the tank and 100 feet away from the drain field. So this is just a little bit of clarification here. And the tank is usually like 10 feet from the house. All right, now let's move on to the drain field. So drain field is where most treatment takes place. So the drain field is a series of trenches or a single bed with perforated pipes. So the goal, the main function for the drain field is to filter, remove, and transform contaminants as effluent moves through the soil. So I want to show you a picture here. That's one much more commonly you see nowadays what drain field looks like. So they're polyethylene, like those are plastic pipes, and they are buried about 1 to 3 feet below surface. For where to place your drain field, it's like soil is important. So it requires unsaturated soil because that's where like the most treatment takes place. It's the water and the soil interaction. When the drain field is placed, it's at least 24 inch. The bottom of the drain field should be at least 24 inch from the highest water table, or we call it a wet season water table. Just because that's also the new building code, that's the setback of that. We want to protect our groundwater. So leave that space, let the soil work, absorb all the contaminants instead of washing into the groundwater. So that's a very, very quick recap of septic systems. If you have more questions, like I said, I will provide the PowerPoint slide to you. You can click that link and watch the recording. Now let's move to hurricane. Just have a look at the hurricane season, because for technically we are in the hurricane season. We had, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a tropical storm, which I'm not sure where you are located, if it impact you. From where I am, I'm in Central Florida. Fortunately, it didn't bring like a major rainfall event. So just a reminder here, Atlantic hurricane season is from June 1st to November 30th. So from the 2022 like NOAA report predicts above normal hurricane season. And if we break down, they predict about 3 to 6 major hurricanes and 6 to 10 average hurricanes, and about 4 to 21 named storms. So you can also see the chart here, 65% is above normal. So when we see hurricane, it's what do you think are the major impacts of a hurricane? So here I break it down to 3. It just kind of mimic the well care before and after storms. So start from the high-speed wind, and it brings probably like power outage, excessive rain, and flooding. So let's just look into each category. The first is wind. The first is wind here. For wind, there's really not that much like we can do in relate to septic systems. What we want to do is for the trees and the large debris. Just want to clean that up so it doesn't really fall on your drain field. And if you have a private well, also make sure everything is secure so it doesn't get it doesn't hit by the debris, or part of your well cap flew away when there was a heavy wind event. So here is a very good resource you can find from like disaster.ifas.ufa.edu. I'll give you all the additional resources of what you can do to your landscape. And the next thing that's very common for hurricane impact is the power outage. And when it comes to a power outage, if you have a regular gravity-fed septic system, so basically not that much impact. So it's you can still use it as you can still operate it like a gravity fed, even out of power, everything will still business as usual. The impact will be, it's like if you have a system with pump. So if you have a system with pump and with the power, like sometimes the pump it's for the system, you have a mounted system, because it's just the water table, because earlier I mentioned at the bottom of your drain field to the highest water table need to be 24 feet. But some condition, it's just the water table is so high, there's you may move up the drain field, and some it's because it's just the elevation there, the tank. It's just the topography of the land. Then the tank is below the drain field. Then you need a pump to pump it to the drain field. And some other occasions, it's also there's a pump after the tank, just to evenly distribute the effluent to the drain field. Or you have advanced system, then you also have a pump for the tank. So for either condition, if you have a pump, then it will affect the treatment of your septic systems. So in other words, when there's a power outage, you want to limit the water use because it affects the treatment ability. So you want to reduce the water use as much as possible, such as here, just limited to essential use, such as toilet flushing, hand washing, probably like minimize laundry and showers or basins. If the electrical outage is extended or the plumbing begins to drain slowly, then you want to stop all the water use if possible. And the slow draining plumbing may also indicate that the reserve capacity is exceeded and that the system is full. And when the power is restored, so that's it's more like additional comments to the last slide. If for the power outage, it's less than 1 day, so it's really not that bad, just limited some water use, it will be good. But if you know your power will not be restored, like in a day, then you need to plan ahead, like discontinue laundry, limit showers, because in that way, you're allowing the natural occurring like microbial population treating the waste water to regain the productivity and properly treat the wastewater. And the last very common impact here is flooding. So before flooding, it's if your building sewer has a backflow preventer, so there's not much you need to do. If the backflow preventer is a manual valve, make sure it's shut. And if the tank does not have a backflow preventer, it may be desirable to pump the tank to remove the sewage. But the tank, after you pump it, you also want to make sure it's properly anchored. So, because especially for these tanks, it's plastic now. If it's not anchored and with flooding, it will float. That's just a suggestion. So you want to pump it not right before. I wouldn't call it like tomorrow, like the forecast said 24 hours, so there was a major storm coming and you pump it right away. Because even you pump it right away with the flooding, you may not give it enough time to let the microbial population to regain their productivity. So usually just before hurricane season, you pump it. Probably it's not a bad idea. And you make plans. It's before flooding. Always like plan ahead. Just plan what if you get like your property get flooded. So what's your plan to minimize water use or flush of toilet during the actual flooding event? And the next one is during flooding. So during flooding, it's a discontinued electrical power to the system if your system requires a power. And the stop water usage going into the system because of potential for limited treatment. And I say stop, it's more like limited water use, as like only to the essential water use as possible. And another thing you may want to consider is a plug any floor drains in the home connected to the wastewater treatment system to prevent water from backing up through the system into the home. And after flooding, there are quite a bit you need to do. Right after flooding, do not use the system until the flood water has receded from all components of the system. And if you are using water from a flooded well, keep in mind, I shouldn't call it a flooded well. If your private well is also flooded, keep in mind it may be contaminated. Because if you're fried, and when I say a well is flooded, there are several conditions. A is the well head is underwater, or the well is surrounded by water. And sometimes even the well head, probably you don't have standing water, but the property has standing water. You can also consider like your well has the risk of you can also consider it is a flooded well. So just like I said, if your property is flooded, just keep in mind your well might be contaminated. You can contact your local health department or contact a state certified lab to have to do a water testing. And also after flooding, it's for some septic tank, you see on the picture, they have the effluent filter, because usually after flooding event, it will be quite clogged. So you want to clean the effluent filter. And also call our service provider to check the system for sediment and other debris if the system components are filled with flood water. Because for the flooding waters, they contain also a lot of sediments that may clog some components. And also you want to, you do not want to pump the tank when it's still the flooding water is still standing. And also you may want to do some inspections of your septic systems after the water recedes. So you inspect for any signs of damage to the surface of the system. And that also include your drain field. So it's like check the drain field vegetation and if there's any washed away soil. And also very important, it's for the tank itself, just check if any damages to the lid or the inspection ports. And if you have a flooding event, so especially the flooding water is backed up to the house, there's a lot clean up to do. Because when the water is backed up, so we know that water contains bacteria. So you not only need to clean the area, but also need to disinfect the area. And when I say disinfect, you can do that using a chlorine bleach. And the chlorine need to be non-scented household bleach. And do not use this splashless bleach, because it just concentration is not high enough. So when you prepare a chlorine bleach, it's about half cup of chlorine bleach to each gallon of water to disinfect area thoroughly. So you can also follow the instruction on the bottle of your bleach, like the label on your bleach bottle. And when you clean your house, especially like flooded water, like all the water is backed up to the house, just do not pump that water, do not dump that water back to the drain field. So if you, do not dump it back to your toilet or your plumbing fixtures, even just the sink, because eventually it goes to your septic tank. and your septic tank is already under stress. Adding more water will just add more stress to your system. So it sounds quite off, just sweep the water to the yard. So instead of just getting water back to the system, again, doing cleanup, do not forget to test your well water quality and make sure your well doesn't have bacteria contamination. And when it comes to cleanup time, also do not drive vehicles or equipment over the system, because your drain field is about 1 to 3 feet above the below the surface. And drain field, usually I show you the picture there, it's very delicate. So the rule of thumb is do not park anything heavier than a lawnmower on your drain field. Because if anything heavier, like those construction vehicles, if you park on your drain field, it will compact the soil. And the worst scenario will it will also damage your drain field. So that's something you want to keep in mind during your cleanup activity. And so also, if you have any dumpsters for your cleanup, like those big dumpsters, do not set it over the system or any like building materials over the systems. And if you can, I highly suggest, I want to find a picture because I saw a picture the other day when someone was doing the after flooding cleanup activity for their septic system. It's just you put a fence off, just identify where your drain field is and fence off the system to protect it. So some basic, just some really like, I will call it like basic tips, but it can go a long way. And the last thing here, it's a very critical here. It's a lot. It seems like it's like you have to do this after flooding, like you don't have a lot of control of the flooding event, but what you have control is the regular maintenance. So a well-maintained subsystem is better able to withstand the stress of heavy rains and flooding. So really keep your septic system on a regular maintenance. So such as you pump it every 3 to 5 years. Again, it's the real pumping frequency, it go back to the table. It's how big your tank is and how much water you are using. But the rule of thumb, we say it's every 3 to 5 years. And when you use your septic system, you do not do not use your toilet as a trash can. And also do not use your kitchen sink as a trash can. If you can eliminate or just reduce the use of garbage disposal, because any solid into the tank will form the layer there. And if the water cannot stay in the tank long enough to biodegrade these organic matters, once it's washed out to the drain field, it may clog the drain field. And once the drain field is clogged, then it's just the most critical part is now doing its treatment. So like I said, the well maintenance, the regular maintenance goes a long way. And you can also consider another maintenance tip here. It's consider divert stormwater runoff. So I feel what you can do probably it's like you can have some rain gardens or have rain barrels. So just put all the stormwater runoff either to the barrel or you have your rain garden designated for that much stormwater. And here it's a little bit additional resources. If your well is contaminated, you can find certified laboratory. This is the list of certified laboratories. There's also one extension publication on bacterial contamination and shock chlorination. And we also have one UFIFS septic system website if you have more questions on septic systems. And the last one I really enjoy, it's the extension disaster preparedness webpage. So it lists like from homeowner perspective for farm, how to protect your farm and how to protect your landscape. And I said homeowner perspective, it's also food safety and how to prepare your disaster kit. So it's a good resource. I highly encourage you to look into it. And with that, that's my contact info, and that's Dr. Alberton's contact info. I'd like to take any questions and comments you may have.